Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Ultimate Bucket List, and this is your complete guide to the City of London. Where to go, what to do, where to eat, and how to save money in one of the most amazing cities in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the nation's capital. It's an amazing place, full of culture, history, some very world famous attractions, and there's a lot to do here in London. Now, this is going to be quite a long video, but this will tell you everything that you need to know about having the best time of your life here in London. If you're short on time and in general, there's three main areas of London that you'll probably want to explore: Westminster, the West End, and the City of London. Most of the famous attractions you'll have heard of reside in one of these three areas, so these are the areas I want you to kind of focus on. I suppose I better start on telling you how to get around the place and how to use the world famous underground system, aka the Tube. The Tube network is vast and varied, and if you look at a Tube map, it looks very confusing, but I assure you, once you've gone into an underground station, it's actually incredibly easy to use. There's plenty of signs, and you'll have to try very hard in order to actually get lost. Either get an Oyster card, or in my case just a normal credit card, tap it on one of the turnstiles, and away you go. It's literally that easy. You can do the exact same thing for the London buses and the London boats, and these three combined, you'll be able to get across the city within minutes. Be very careful though, because the Tube map is widely not to scale, and sometimes it's quicker to walk than it is to use the Tube, so bear that in mind. If you're looking for a place to stay, I highly recommend staying around the West End or the Theatre District. Especially if you like nightlife, it's perfect, but also it seems to be roughly the centre of London, so if you stay anywhere around here, especially next to a tube station, you'll thank me when you can get around the city very easily. Let's start by heading towards one of the more famous areas of London, Westminster. And I suppose I better start by telling you about this big thing here. Officially, it's called the Elizabeth Tower, but most people know this as Big Ben. It's a bit of a misnomer because Big Ben actually refers to the bell inside the clock tower rather than the actual clock tower itself. This is one of the most iconic images of London, and when you've seen photos or videos of this, it looks pretty much like this. However, when I arrived, it looks more like this. Very much under construction. They're currently renovating it, and it won't be ready for quite a few years, but hopefully when you come to London, it will look significantly better. Right next to Big Ben are the Houses of Parliament. Now, believe it or not, this is where our government resides and does its business, and furthermore, you can't actually go inside. Yes, whilst Parliament is in session, you can actually attend Parliament. All you have to do is queue, and if there's room in the gallery, they'll security check you and you can actually watch the proceedings. That is, if you can stand all the bullshit that goes on in this place. If you don't want to go inside, that's okay. There's plenty of good photo opportunities in and around Westminster. Rather conveniently, right next to Westminster, is Westminster Abbey. This is the famous cathedral where the coronations happen, royal weddings happen, and it's an amazing place to go into. I highly recommend that you do go into Westminster Abbey. This, along with St Paul's, is one of the most famous churches in all of London, and it's probably a place that you've seen on the TV and movies many times. To get the best possible shots of Westminster, you'll need to cross the bridge. So over the bridge you go, and that's pretty much the best viewpoint. Obviously when you come here, hopefully it won't have so much scaffolding all over it. Boy, it's unsightly, but it'll be nice when it's done. But whilst walking across the river, you'll notice a big giant Ferris wheel on the other side. This is the famous London Eye. Yes, it's a big giant Ferris wheel, and yes, they're pretty much in every major city nowadays. But it's still nice to go around, and the views from the top are simply incredible. As you can imagine though, it's busy and you'll need to book way in advance, but the views more than make up for it. Whilst walking around the London Eye, you'll notice other attractions, such as the London Dungeons, which I highly recommend. It's pretty scary but cool at the same time. And it's also a nice place to chill out with a cold beverage overlooking the River Thames and Westminster. So yes, definitely a good place to stop if you do want something nice to look at. This area has some very ornate looking pubs, and I highly recommend, if you've never been to an English pub before, go into one of these. Nearby Westminster Abbey, you'll walk through St James's Park, aka the Royal Park. There's a reason why they call it a Royal Park, is because right next door is one of the most famous attractions that people come and see. Buckingham Palace. This is the Queen's official home, though she doesn't actually consider this her home, she considers Windsor Castle her home, but point beside, this is officially where she resides most of the time. If the royal standard is flying high, it means that she's actually there. Believe it or not, you can actually go on tours around Buckingham Palace, but they are rare. They usually happen between July and October, when the Queen is officially not in residence. But you have to book way in advance, and it's pretty expensive. So most tourists generally hang around the gates and take pictures of the palace and the monuments in front of it, and they also hang around for the changing of the guard ceremony, which happens at roughly 11 o'clock every day. Due to COVID, it's not been happening with as much pomp and circumstance as you see in this video, but hopefully by the time you arrive here in London, everything will return to normal, and you'll be able to see this again. The footage you're seeing here, I actually shot this back in October, and it's a decent view, but I would have loved to have been a bit closer to the gates, because that's where pretty much all the main stuff happens. But if you are watching the changing of the guard ceremony, I highly recommend that you actually follow the guards down the road, because they actually march towards St James's Gardens, which in itself is an attraction, so that's kind of cool to see. If you guys want me to make another video about the changing of the guard ceremony, let me know in the comment section below. That's basically Westminster in a nutshell. Now it's time to go to the opposite end of the city. The City of London. Originally, the City of London is this 1 square mile bit of the city. It's part of the old Roman city of Londinium that used to stand there, but has now been amalgamated into the greater City of London. Now it's a big giant financial and business district, one of the most powerful in the world. Admittedly, the actual City of London itself isn't that interesting. Yes, it's got a few nice buildings, but the main two things that you'll need to visit whilst you're here in the City of London is famous Tower Bridge and the Tower of London. Now, I've actually made a separate video about the Tower of London right here, but in short, this is where famous monarchs traditionally lived and is currently home to the crown jewels, the most expensive and priceless jewellery in the country. Check out my video here. The other famous landmark that most people associate with London, Tower Bridge. Now, I know a lot of you will be asking, can you actually go inside? And the answer is yes. You could pay a small admission fee and go up one of the towers and walk across the bridge at the top there, where they've got a glass roof and a glass floor, so that's pretty interesting. Most of the time, tourists are just happy to walk along the bridge and take various photos of it, and it is a very pretty bridge. To get the best possible shots of Tower Bridge, you'll need to basically be next to the Tower of London, or on the other side of the river on the west side. The views of the tower from the east side aren't very good, so these two are probably the best views of Tower Bridge you're going to get. But guys, this is one of the most famous bridges, if not the most famous bridge, in the world, and I highly recommend that you take your time and take some lovely pictures here. Particularly at night, it glows like a Christmas tree. There's some very nice riverside eateries next to Tower Bridge that I highly recommend that you check out. Whilst you're on the west side of the bridge, you'll notice a big giant warship, the HMS Belfast, which you can pay to go inside, but it is a warship. But a few streets away, you'll find this: London's tallest building, the Shard. It's mainly residential and office blocks, but you can actually pay and go to the observation tower, where you get some pretty good amazing views of London. Whilst you're up there, you'll notice a cathedral on the other side of the water. This is the other famous church in London, St Paul's Cathedral. It's pretty amazing on the inside, and I highly recommend that you do go, but also once you've checked out the cathedral, check out the bridge that's directly opposite it. This is the infamous Millennium Bridge. A bridge that when first opened wobbled like crazy, is now incredibly stable, and it provides you some excellent photo opportunities. So especially if you're a photographer or a videographer, you can get some amazing views of Tower Bridge, St Paul's, the Shard. It's a pretty good photography and videography spot. But as night falls and you want to be entertained, there's only one place you need to go: the West End, aka the Theatre District. This is London's answer to Broadway, and arguably better than Broadway. There are lots of traditional theatres around here where you can take in a musical or a show. The nightlife around here is pretty damn amazing. The West End encompasses Covent Garden, where there's lots of theatres around, Leicester Square, which is a public square full of shops, casinos, and Chinatown is nearby, the largest Chinatown in the country. Piccadilly Circus, which is home to these giant LED screens, and at night they look pretty damn amazing. And it's also home to Oxford Street, the longest shopping street in London. So if you like to shop or be entertained, the West End is definitely the place to go. Especially if you're a person of the night, the red light district is in Soho, which is also the West End, if you like that sort of thing. You'll find everything here in the West End, and there's several underground tube stops that are right next to each other. So when I told you in the beginning of the video that you should stay in the West End, now you see why. Whilst we're here at the West End, I'll also like to mention that this is home to the best cuisine in the city. You can find anything from cheap Asian street food to money is no object restaurants. Seriously, you can have it all here in the West End. And it's a great place to hang out even if you just want to watch the world go by. You can do this pretty much here at Trafalgar Square, whereby you've got the National Gallery behind you, and yes, that's free of charge and you're able to go into it. These are the three main areas that I think you should explore whilst you're in London if you've only got a short time. You could do one area per day and see most of what London has to offer in 2 or 3 days. But if you've got more time and you're willing to travel a bit further, there's some very interesting places. Let's start with West London and Hyde Park. This is the largest green space here in London. It's a lovely park to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Right on the side of Hyde Park is the Royal Albert Hall, the most famous music venue here in London. It's home to the last night of the proms, and if you do manage to catch a proms show, I highly recommend it. Yes, it's classical music, but it's a fine representation of British society. Whilst you're around here, you'll notice that you're in the borough of Kensington and Chelsea, the richest and most exclusive area of London. And nothing screams fancy and decadence rather than Kensington Palace, which is definitely worth a look. What's also worth a look is Harrod's, the famous department store. If you want to see celebrities do their shopping, this is a place to go because, quite frankly, it's expensive here. This is where the Queen famously does her shopping and where celebrities like Michael Jackson go to buy literally everything. This area is also home to some of the city's most famous museums. The Science Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is also known as the V&A, and my personal favourite, the Natural History Museum, which is amazing inside, and once again it's free of charge to enter. If museums is your thing, you'll also need to check out the north side of the city. Madame Tussauds is famously on Baker Street, and this is the original Madame Tussauds that actually opened. There are Madame Tussauds everywhere in the world these days, but this is the original and best. Because it's on Baker Street, it's also home to the Sherlock Holmes Museum. So if you go to Sherlock Holmes' house at 221B Baker Street, you'll find the Sherlock Holmes Museum. Nearby Regent's Park is home to the London Zoo, so if you want to see some animals, go to Regent's Park. The British Museum is also located here in the north side of the city, and it has the most stunning roof that you'll ever see. And the museum itself, pretty damn good. And once again, it's free of charge to go into. If you do like modern art, the Tate Modern is located in the south side of the city on the South Bank. By law here in the UK, most state-funded museums have to be free of charge to enter, and most of the important ones I've mentioned so far are free. So if you are on a budget, some of these museums are definitely a good way to waste some time and take in some culture. But what else is there to do? If you're willing to travel a little bit further, there's the O2 Arena, which is formerly known as the Millennium Dome. This is the modern concert venue that's in the city, and you can take in concerts, basketball games, ice hockey here. Visit Canary Wharf, which is an ultra-modern financial district. Admittedly, it's kind of like Dubai, but British and crappy weather. There's not all that much to do apart from look at the lovely buildings. But one area I do recommend that you visit is the area of Greenwich. This is home to the famous Royal Greenwich Observatory, and this is where time begins. Seriously, I'm not joking. All time is based off Greenwich Mean Time, which is this line here on the meridian. You can actually pay to go in the Greenwich Observatory, and there's a lot of interesting artifacts. There's a lot of interesting instruments. And you can take a stereotypical video or picture of you walking along the prime meridian line, just like I'm doing right now. You can easily waste a morning here at the Greenwich Observatory. But right next door to that is the Queen's House. Contrary to popular belief, the Queen's House isn't actually the Queen's house. It's actually an art gallery, nothing to do with the Queen. And you've also got the National Maritime Museum, which is quite interesting. If you like the sea or navy or boats, the National Maritime Museum is quite interesting. Speaking of boats, London's most famous boat is moored permanently on land. This is the Cutty Sark. At one point, this was the fastest tea clipper in the world, and was so important to the tea trade with China. Nowadays, it's been fully restored and put on land, but when you go around the inside of it, it's actually quite interesting to see how it used to work back in the day. And I've never been on a wooden clipper / galleon before, but I found it really interesting. Yes, and let's ring the bell just for fun. Greenwich can be a pain in the backside to get to using the tube system, so I highly recommend using the boats instead. Now, you can actually use the boats just like you use the tube system, and if you're wondering why I'm taking a video of this particular old woman, she actually couldn't stop farting, so she left me a trail of farts whilst I was walking behind her. Dirty woman. But anyway, to use the boats is dead easy. All you have to do is scan in just like you would on a tube, get on the boat, enjoy a lovely boat ride down the Thames, and when you get to the destination of your choice, literally tap back out again. A lot of locals and a lot of tourists don't know about the boats, and I highly recommend that you actually use them to get around, especially if you're going between Westminster and the City of London, or Westminster and Greenwich. It's by far easier to use the boat than it is to use the tube system, especially if you're going to Greenwich. Off the beaten path in the north end of the city, you'll find Camden Town. It's famous for its world-famous Camden Market. One of the traditional marketplaces of the city, it's now home to a whole plethora of different things that you can look, taste and buy. And if you like your sports, the National Cricket Ground at Lord's is nearby. And if you are a big sports fan, you'll find that London is home to some of our national stadiums. we have the National Rugby Stadium, Twickenham, in the south side of the city, the National Cricket Ground, which I've already mentioned, and the National Football Stadium at Wembley. London, as you can imagine, is also home to several of the world's most famous football teams. All of them play along the outskirts, and some of them can be a bit of a pain to get to, but I highly recommend that you take in a game if you get a chance. I'm not going to talk too much about them because I've made separate videos of them all right here, but suffice to say, London and sports is synonymous. Finally, if you're willing to venture a little bit more outside the block, go to Windsor. Windsor is a town that's 23 miles west of London. It's a quaint little traditional town, but it's home to Windsor Castle, the place that the Queen actually calls home. Once again, I made a separate video about it right here, and I highly recommend that you check that out. Overall guys, London is a place that you won't find boring. It's a multicultural, diverse city that has some very interesting things every step of the way. If you've never been to London in your life, I recommend that you add this to your list immediately, like right now.
Okay Nin, I'm sold. What do I need to do? Well, you need to come here to London. It's one of the most famous cities in all of the free world, and you really won't struggle to find flights here. London is served by 6 major airports, and 5 of which are nowhere near London. You'll probably come across Heathrow, and it will take you literally half an hour on a train to get here because it's actually quite far out.
The tube is cheaper, but it takes significantly longer. Driving to London isn't recommended because London traffic is notoriously terrible, and there's even a congestion charge if you drive within the City of London. Overall, I highly recommend that it's not worth driving and you're better off using public transport. Speaking of which, the tube is by far the best way of getting around the city. It costs the same to use the buses and water boats as well, so take advantage of those, especially if you're visiting Greenwich. The tube map is widely not to scale, so look on an actual map before you go anywhere, because sometimes it's actually quicker to walk to the place than to use the tubes.
Using the tube system can look pretty complicated, but I assure you it's actually very easy. You'll need your contactless credit card, or if you don't have that, fill up an Oyster card at any station and use that instead. One of the things that other tourist guides don't tell you is to actually use the river buses. Now, this is an actual cool way to see the city along the River Thames, and it provides you some excellent photo opportunities. You can use buses, don't bother with taxis because they can get quite pricey.
If you're looking for a place to stay, I highly recommend that you stay in the West End. It's full of shops, entertainment, there's plenty of tube stations around so you can get virtually anywhere, and it's considered to be the centre point of London. Westminster is a very close second. Usually when I stay here, I stay close to Westminster Abbey or Piccadilly Circus tube station because with those 2 places I can get around the city very easily.
Everything like Buckingham Palace, Westminster Abbey, Big Ben, the London Eye, a lot of these things are within walking distance, so I highly recommend that, especially if you don't want to waste time travelling, stay around the West End area. The only other attractions that aren't near the West End that you probably most likely do is this Tower Bridge and that over there, the Tower of London. The cost to do things like attractions? Well, as you can imagine from a major capital city, attractions can be quite expensive. And if you choose to eat out, that can quickly add up too. But to be honest, it's nowhere near the most expensive city in the world that you'll come across, so in all honesty, it's not bad. Is there anything else? Yes. A lot of guides won't tell you that you'll be walking quite a significant distance. The tube stations are massive, you'll be walking everywhere. So if I were you, arm yourself with comfortable shoes and I think you'll be absolutely fine. At least you'll be losing weight after you come back from London. Also, a lot of places here in London are now becoming cashless, i.e. you can't use proper money. So make sure that you've got a contactless credit card because most retailers actually prefer that to you handing them cash. Thanks a lot, COVID.
There's helpful maps everywhere, so it's actually pretty hard to get lost in London, even though it's quite an expansive city. Currently, there are COVID restrictions, so lots of social distancing, hand sanitisers, face masks are compulsory in various areas, etc., especially when using public transport, so bear that in mind if you are coming to London during this pandemic. A lot of people asking me about the tour buses. If you've got absolutely no intentions of going into the attractions, but actually want to go and see them, use the tour buses because they will provide you a quick overview of London, even though you probably won't actually go into any of these things.
And once again, check the maps of the attractions that you want to do, because sometimes it's quicker to use the boat or a bus than it is to use the tube system, so bear that in mind. But guys, London is a wonderful city and I'm pretty sure that you'll have a fantastic time here. If you do like this video, please be sure to like, share and subscribe. Comment on the comment section below, and if you've got any other ideas for bucket lists, tweet them at me. If I get enough suggestions, I'll go ahead and do that. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Lots of concourses. You literally will